All right, everybody. This is the video. I've been uh, kind of lack of motivation in some respects for making videos, and my computer still has problems. So that is the quick explanation for why I've not uploaded in a while. But here I am. I'm back. Um, So this video, I kind of wanted to talk about the recent results. Well, I say recent, I mean, I'm going to be discussing Double Rainbow 3, which occurred, what was this, like 4 months ago? Um, so I guess that's not too recent, but I never made a Double Rainbow video. I couldn't think of how I wanted to go about it. And now that some time has passed, I've kind of realized that I don't want to do like a big tournament report for it because I already wrote up the tournament report and I don't know. I mean, it's just you know, I did well and I had fun, but I wish I did better. And it's like there's so much more we got to talk about than my run that I had 4 months ago, where I don't remember like half of the matches that great. Um, okay, so let us begin with said double rainbow results. Um, for those of you who don't know, there was an IRL RSTP. I don't know how you wouldn't know this, but there was an IRL RSTPK tournament that occurred in Tokyo this June, the end of this June, 2024. It was won by 1010 on Bombtar. Let me make sure this is recording right. Yeah, it looks fine. It was won by 1010 on Bombtar. Um, Bang Me Mine, as they call it. So this event was quite interesting. So there was 89 players, which is by a pretty significant amount the biggest RSBK tournament ever. Also, as I mentioned in my history video, there are no there were no official RSPK tournaments. So if you're thinking like, oh, it wasn't like some regional in Japan bigger bet, no, it wasn't. It wasn't because it wasn't RSPK. So, anyways, this was the biggest RSPK tournament. So the structure was really cool. So day one, um, it was 7 rounds of Swiss, and then day two cut to top 16, and you could switch which deck you use between day one and day two. You did have to publicize your deck after day one, though. Like you would have to, everybody would know what deck you were on for day two, or everyone would know what deck you played day one going into day two. So that was kind of interesting. And also, they did allow the use of proxies, which is nice because, I mean, if you have like 6 viable decks for day two, you don't want to have, like $2,000 worth of cards to have to worry about. So, anyways, I believe, yeah, Kenten has the results of the tournament. I think he has the, hold on. There's like a metagame breakdown in this, I'm pretty sure. There's plenty of videos on the format, um, not the format, the event, where it'll have videos of the play. Several of the games were recorded, and so that's pretty nice. I think yeah, this one's my game. So there's been a bunch of videos from Japanese players about the event itself. Oh, this is just top 16. Okay, that's fine. I'll go through this and then I'll find the other article that has the meta at large. I think I will. Actually, I don't really need to. I'll go through the top 16 here, and I'll just make a note afterwards what the rest of the field kind of looked like from what I saw and from the actual printed results. So Tintin won the event with Bombtar. Um, So this was his day one list, and we see a whole bunch of pretty strange, like subtle things going on here. We see the Jirachi HL over the Jirachi DX. Um, I've kind of long said that the Jirachi HL helps a lot for Sceptile matchups because it lets you get Electro DX out quicker than Jirachi DX usually does. So that's an interesting call. Um, we also see the fighting Dark Tyranitar. I don't really know what the like big purpose of that card is. I mean, it's a good card for sure. Um, and we also see a very thick 444 line of the Dark Tyranitar along with the Retriever, which is quite thick. No Dark Pokeball or Rocket's Pokeball rather is also interesting. Um, Still opts for the Lapras, no Lunasol, and no. We saw Sableye. I think we'll see that later here. So nothing, nothing super saucy there. Uh, I don't really like the fighting Larvitar in this deck. I think that the situations where it is a good card to have are extremely, extremely slim and not worth playing it over the fire one. But I mean, it's a subtle change. We also see ATM Rock in this. I feel like I saw quite a few ATM Rocks just in people's lists in Japan. Only one Windstorm, also a pretty interesting, pretty bold choice, but um, yeah, that's about all. I think one more energy than we're used to seeing. I think a lot of them are on two heal energies. Really kind of shocking he was able to fit so many. Like looking at this list, it's like he fits the full T-Tar line in. He fits in two Stevens. He fits in the extra energy, and he fits in um, the what's the other one? Fits in the ATM Rock. So he's just got like a lot of room for everything he sort of needs. So definitely a cool list. And then for day two, I think not as crazy. He opts for the slimmer Dark Tyranitar package, or at least he doesn't run the fighting one, which is interesting because Bombtar did really well game or day one, so not very much like incentive to change it off. So maybe the fighting Dark Tyranitar was for something else besides the mirror. I'm not too sure. I haven't talked to Tenten except to say, hey, good job. And then the only thing that I see that changed is he's playing one Jirachi DX. Um, excuse me. So that just really helps the consistency of the list. I would think if you've got three starters and along with the two swoops. Um, yeah, very strong. He went 5-2 day one, I'm pretty sure, and then went undefeated day two. Um, Jason also went 5-2 day one, and then he went undefeated until finals. Jason talked a lot about his lists and his for both days, as well as his like decision making for what decks to play. So I would highly recommend just reading Jason's blog about this. I think that's probably the best place to go. But suffice it to say, I really do like his list. I think Kamler has, for a while now, been seen as this sort of immutable deck where it's like, yep, you play your 4-3 Camerupt, you play your Stantlers, you play your busted trainer cards, and then that's all you need. But we really kind of seen people messing around with it more with the Unknown E. I think Rocket's Wob is really cool in this deck. We've seen some people messing around with Entei's Star. I've seen people on Water Mew. So there's really a whole lot that can be done with this deck, and I think we're going to continue to see it being pushed forward in the future. Um, and then for day two, he plays this pretty wild Dragtrode uh, list with no Sneasel. He plays my least favorite card in the format, Charizard Star, and he got second. Thank God he did not win with this card. I'm like, gee, I would be losing my mind if Jason won the tournament with that. Anyways, no, this list is really cool, and I think honestly, like I get Japanese vibes from it in terms of just how how different of an approach it is from the quote unquote standard way to pilot drag trode. Even like the Japanese way to pilot drag trode is pretty far removed from this. I mean, like the force swoop, the trip, like the no Holland engine, uh, and it's just very wild, but a very cool approach to a very good deck, and honestly solidified this as being less of a just worse version of Sneasel Drag Trode and more its own unique threat to watch out for. Um, and then top four we had Suika on Bombtar. This is a really wild list. Ops almost strictly for disruption. He's not playing any Jirachi. He's playing the Sableye in order to stop the opponent from playing supporters. He's using Girafarig to sort of also shut down their Jirachi, so that they don't have access to Jirachi or to supporters. And this helped him at least in his game against me that he or his yeah his game against me games against me that he won because he was able to slow my setup so much and I couldn't get anything going, and then he was just able to get trode up. And even though he's only on two scrambles, because you do need to adjust your energy lineup quite a bit to play Sableye, um, he was still able to do what he needed to. Beyond that, not a whole lot of crazy things. Three admin is very bold. One Elms, one Scott, and no Rockets Pokeball is pretty unusual. Um, I'm really curious about the reasoning on the Scott. That's not a card you typically see. I actually like Castaway in this deck a lot, like one Castaway for a similar purpose where all three of the cards it grabs are good most of the time. Um, but Scott's an interesting one because you usually want to admin a lot with this deck, even early game. Also, Force Swoop is pretty interesting. It makes sense. I mean, you play a lot of basics that you want to swoop out, like excess Sableye you can swoop out. You obviously want to swoop the Lapras. So interesting decision making there. And then day two we play the Warp Point. This messed me up. I lost against Suika because of this Warp Point. And I've talked about it with Pemmen, who's a German player, um, about playing warp cards in this deck. It's like he was talking about warp energy, and I think that it's hard to say, but I think we could be seeing a world where Bombtar does need to start respecting the just myriad of ways that it gets messed up uh, by not being able to switch. Like obviously you can bomb, but sometimes you need more than that. Also, why is this playing the fighting Larvitar? Oh, because there's no okay. No, that well, even then, actually, I guess with Rainbow, the fighting Larvitar might be a little better. I still don't like it. Still don't like it. Then also on top four we have Jin on Nidoqueen. This is actually some similar building strategies to what I've messed around with Nidoqueen. I've tried experimenting with Raticate in this deck. I've tried experimenting with Sceptile EX plus Energy Trans Sceptile. I've tried experimenting with Energy Trans Sceptile plus Beating Wings Pidgeot. And I've tried experimenting with Wobbuffet and Sceptile EX as well. Um, and I think Nidoqueen is a deck is like functionally kind of has to be a Sceptile EX deck. I think that historically it's not really been played that way, but I think that the more that we play this format, the more kind of we're just kind of seeing the writing on the wall. Um, Interesting. Like also as far as Nidoqueen goes, I feel like historically it's been played without the Holland engine, but more and more we're seeing people kind of go to either the full Holland engine or like a fusion of it. And here he is on the three transceiver instead of four, and that is something that some people are on. Uh, the logic is that you don't necessarily need the Holland engine that bad. I mean, we see he's on. two Stevens, two Celios, so it makes sense. Um, Triple Windstorm is also interesting. I know a lot of people like to cram Desert Ruins, but there wasn't really expected to be much Railer, and you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. The Also like the multi energy is interesting. I think that that's typically played whenever you're jamming the Septile because you do play enough grass to facilitate it. Other than that, the Wobbuffet's also cool because you can grab both of them off of Mentor. They make Toxic better and they make Power Lariat better. They do both kind of suck to open with, but what can you do? Um, he is on the Brinies and the Versus Seeker, and you can retreat Evolved Wobbuffet with DRE, but then you're losing a DRE, so not the best. But definitely a really cool approach to the deck. I think Sceptile has kind of solidified itself as being pretty essential to this deck's success, and Wobbuffet is worth messing around with. I think he is playing the worst Why Not, but like I'm pretty sure that the one that confuses is just better. I don't know if that was a mistake, like in the he maybe didn't know about it, or maybe he reported it wrong, or maybe he just made a unusual decision. But I would build this with the confusion way of Wobbuffet. But I mean, other than that, I think this is a really cool list. Um, Two Retriever also. Didn't even think about that, but that is interesting. I don't quite know where that would be applicable, but also no what's it called? No Holland's Magneton is quite unusual. Officer just the Holland's Magnemite instead. I guess because you're playing Mentor, that makes sense. But but yeah, very cool deck here. Um, then what do we got? We've got my Gardevoir. I've already written about this a couple of times actually, and I said that this list was perfect. I am messing around with some other text in it that I have posted about on Twitter, and I'm still working on those. But I think that this list is very close to being perfect. You I kind of said the Mind EX was sort of essential, and playing against Bayonet some more, I don't know if that's true, but you need something for Bayonet in this deck, I think. I think Gardevoir cleans, like, most of the rest of the format pretty, pretty sizably. Like, this deck is so good. This deck is so crazy unfair sometimes. And so just playing, like, cards for Bayonet I think makes a lot of sense because I mean you got to tech for that one bad matchup. Then we have Ashidam on Bombtar. So he's got the two lists. Let's change to Briney's. Okay. So also on on Castaway on a pretty thick Holland FF package actually. I almost never see 3/3, and it's he even had to cut a scramble for it. It looks like he's on quite a few energy too. So really thick energy, really thick Tyranitar. I mean 444 along with the Retriever, and it looks like he's just kind of slimming down on a bunch of other things as well. He well actually I don't know. Well, 3 POW is pretty interesting. Um, but no Lunar Rock, no the two Jirachi Hidden Legends, no Sableye, no other nonsense, I guess. The nonsense does not come from the Pokemon lineup; it comes from the other lineup. Balloonberry is really cool. Like I said, playing these switch cards in Bombtar, I think, is something that you should at least consider. I think that Bombtar kind of had the Camler effect where people saw it as you have to play it this one specific way, and over time we're sort of seeing um, more and more options that you can play in the deck, and so I think that is really cool. Um, Let's see. What else do we have here? Yeah, I'm kind of realizing I'm speaking a lot, so let me kind of get through some more of these here. Um, we have Subaru's Flygon EX deck lists. Hold on. I'm gonna go grab some water real quick. Be right back, y'all. Okay, I've returned. So, Subaru's Flygon. I love the day one he is on the fighting Flygon. Truthfully, I could not tell you what this card does off the top of my head. I just know it's really bad. But it's a fighting type, and I believe it does 60 damage. You're gonna have to trust me that it says 60. But it does 60 damage, so it does one-shot Dark Tyranitar. So, uh, there you go. Um, I do not really like this kind of Flygon EX deck. We'll get to that a little bit later, actually, about Flygon EX uh, stuff. But I'm not a huge fan of this style of deck building. Now, that being said, we do have some cool things going on. He finds room for both of the Mews, and I think that's always really nice to have in this. Excuse me, this sort of list. Plays no warp energy. Instead, he's on a pretty high count of the Delta Rainbows and then the basic energies. Um, excuse me. Let's see what else we got here. He is on the Pidgeot line, the 203 Pidgeot. No Firo. I think Firo is usually kind of people like to play in this list. He's on the Ray EX and the Absol for backup attacker and for cool stuff purposes. Absol does cool stuff. Also interesting to see the Subaru, another player who swapped out their fighting attacker for day two, even though Bombtar had a lot of placements for day two. So just interesting to see that. Um, Other than that, nothing super crazy. I would say not running any warp energy and just going for the double warp point is pretty pretty bold, but there were very few Padlock decks in this event because of the time constraints. They weren't even bad time constraints, but they were like enough that people were probably erring on the side of caution. And so that's most likely why people kind of got away with playing a lower count. And honestly, maybe I should have taken that into account when I was preparing for the tournament, but what can you do? I liked having my 3 warp energy. So, other than that, yeah, I mean, I don't really like Flygon EX played this way, but if you're gonna play it this way, I think this is a really cool list. It does not play Delta Executor, which I like. I think the card is pretty awful in this deck, and the fighting Flygon might be better. Um, let's see what else here. Is this the last top 8? Yeah. And the final top 8 is Negi, aka Raspberry Bell. You might know him from TCG1. He played. I think he was the only one in top 8 who no, Jason also switched, but yeah, most people did stick with their same deck and almost the same list, if not the same list from day 1 to day 2. At least in the top 8. We'll see if the top 16 changes. Negi also went Bombtar day 1. The most unusual thing about this Bombtar list, besides the way that he formatted his list, is definitely the high solid rage count. High solid rage, no cessation crystal. It's Very interesting stuff. Also, we see a very high Stevens count. We see no retriever, just going for that straight 4-4-3 Tyranitar line. The 3-4 Trode is also quite thick. Opts for Jirachi DX over Jirachi HL. I'm always kind of curious to see where people stand on this. It's pretty rare that in this format where there's just contention on how to like set your deck up as far as like your starter. The only time we really see that is in some like Delta decks that either play three Holland's Cast or four, and that's the only thing that I usually see. But this one, it does seem like there's a lot of contention of like, do you want to start Sableye? Do you want to start Jirachi DX, or do you want to start Jirachi HL? So it's kind of interesting to see that culminate. Other than that, like if you take out the three solid rage and replace them with like I don't know a Castaway and a Brinies and a Versus Seeker or something, this would look like extremely bog standard. But the three solid rage is interesting. I'm kind of curious as to the rationale there, like what numbers he was trying to hit. Bombtar doesn't typically need to hit super high numbers, but it does let you take out Sceptile EX more consistently. So that could be the main thing, but only Negi can say. And then day two, I'm pretty sure that this is Kanten's Bomb Champ list. Like I'm looking at it, and I do not. The energy lineup might be a little different, but it's more or less looks like Kanten's Bomb Champ list. Negi kind of going the opposite route of these other players, where instead of removing a fighting type attacker, he just played a fighting type deck because he saw the number of Bombtar. So there you go. Pretty instructive, and I think he did beat a Bombtar to get to top 8. I could be wrong about that. Um, I know he lost to Jason, pretty sure, in top 8, but I could be wrong. Then we have Denachio. This is top 16. Day 1, he was on Dragtrode. Day 2, he was on Nidoqueen. So the day 1 list, opting for the Lightning Dratini, we have seen some contention about this. Some people really are sold on this. Some people think it's a really stupid idea. Not educated enough in Dragtrode to make a comment either way. Other than that, I am not seeing too many surprises in this deck. I feel like they don't usually play 3 Rainbow. I think they usually play 1 fewer, but I could be wrong. Versus Seeker with no Brinies, or sorry, Brinies with no Versus Seeker. Also, a little unusual, but probably fine. Triple Mentor is a good call, I think. It gives you more consistency in those early turns, and the quad Rocket Spooky Ball means that as long as you're hitting a Mentor, there's a pretty good odds that you will have set up for the next turn. Um, Other than that, the quad Windstorm 2 Desert Ruins is honestly a little excessive for a tournament like this. I think you can surely shade a single Windstorm and be okay for like the Versus Seeker. Um, Other than that, like I think we saw quite a few players in this top 8 kind of pilot something a little safer in order to just try to like skirt by 5-2 or something day 1. Not skirt by. I mean, it's an incredible record, but you know what I mean. Like, just do solidly day 1 and then day 2 have the sauce. So day 2, he did go with Nidoqueen, and like we've seen all the way back in Stambler 1 from this year and in top 4, here we are again, Sceptile EX. He's also on the Delta Nidoqueen in this, which I think is great. I think this card is really awesome. And pretty underutilized historically in RSPK Nidoqueen. I think it hits a great damage threshold. It is good both early game, mid game, and late game. Like it's good mid game to kind of like thin your deck out, and keep the resources flowing. It's good early game because if you like do open the Nidoqueen Delta early, then you can just start setting up your Pidgeot or start up a neat arena and then search for the Pidgeot. And then late game, of course, it's like hitting for 90 and it's like hits a higher damage threshold than fighting Nidoqueen typically does. So definitely a really cool inclusion in this deck. And then, of course, we do see the 323 Pidgeot, the 101 Sceptile EX, also on the good Trico. Um, what else? Not opting for the Holland engine or anything resembling it. Instead, he's on um, 4 Stevens, 4 Stelios, 4 Copycat, and only a single admin. Also, no Versus Seeker, running only the Brinies as well. That's it. No Warp Energy, no Versus Seeker. Very bold, and I would say maybe a little cutting it close. Also, only one Great Ball is interesting. I haven't tried this list out, but it does seem very interesting. Also, 2 Desert Ruins, quad Windstorm, I think is again a little like if you're preparing for those sorts of PAL and like Ryegg's type of strategies. I think that playing cards like Versus Seeker and Warp Energy would do more than like the fifth and sixth answers to Crystal Beach, but um, it's pretty subjective. Uh, Not opting for the multi, opting for the heal energy instead. I totally get this. I think multi is a little cope in this deck, honestly. I think the times when it is useful as like a fighting or psychic energy are pretty low, and the times where it is useful as like a single grass energy for Nidoqueen are like you could just run a heal energy most of the time. I don't know, but I haven't played with this list, so but I think I would probably play something close to this. I think this cuts like a lot of the fat, and it just says, I'm going to get Nidoqueens up and I'm going to get Sceptile EX up, and then I'm going to win. So then we have, um, so funny story. There were 2 Delta Salamence decks that did well in this event. I don't remember who the other one was, but Kobayu went, I believe, 6-1 in day one with Delta Salamence. It was either 6-1 or like 5-2 with a good seed. Um, After round 2 or 3 or something of the event, I was talking to Rogar, who told me he lost to Delta Salamence and was recanting, in grisly detail how he possibly lost Rayler versus Delta Salamence. And I was like, wow, man, that's crazy. And also, it's crazy because you're like 2-0, and there's like a Delta Salamence player who is on that same record. And then I was talking to Jason the next round, and he also lost to Delta Salamence. I was like, wow, it's crazy that this guy is like just taking out all the Americans. And then I came to find out it was 2 different Delta Salamence decks that also just took both of them out. For people who are not super familiar with RS2PK, Delta Salamence is not a deck. Like before this event, I don't think a single like good player was putting Delta Salamence above like maybe the bottom end of tier 3. Like I'm pretty sure people just did not think of this deck at all. And since this event, I have not seen anybody try to brew it, and I've not seen anybody try to build it IRL, and I didn't see anybody play it at Stambler 4. So who knows? I guess sometimes you can make like this super ultimate Cinderella run and still just nobody cares. So yeah, that's a little demotivating. As to what this deck does, so the basic strategy, from what I can gather, is you you use Delta Salamence to use its attack and keep getting metal energy back, or is it fire energy? No, it's fire energy. It's fire energy. Its second attack discards the metal energies. So you use its attack, you keep getting the fire energy back onto it, If it gets confused, you can retreat it because it only has one retreat cost. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. If it gets confused by Stantler, you can just retreat and keep using Fire Dance and getting the energy back every turn. So it's got like built-in anti-Stantler technology. The rest of these cards, I have no idea. Like, I mean, Milotic Delta is a really cool card. Is it better than playing like Jirachi to set up, or like a Pidgeot line? He is opting for the Lickitung in order to both set up, and I don't even know what damage you would be placing down. Like what? The only thing I can think of is like against Bombtar lists, if they're on Fire Larvitar, you can two-shot Fire Larvitar, which sounds very specific. Also, I guess it does hit what's it called? Like Psychic Trico, but uh, uh, maybe I guess. Um, but no, this list is super cool. Also, it's playing double TrodiX and no POW, which I'm just now realizing. I'm gonna keep it 100. I do not understand this deck list at all. I am kind of flabbergasted that it ran so hot, and I'm really curious to know if it was a fluke and it just hit good matchups and good draws. And I'm not saying that to like to diss Kobayu. I have no idea what you know what his games were like, except for like the one that he beat Jason or Rogar in. But I just don't know. I don't have enough information on this besides the list in front of me and the record. Day two, he played a little bit different. He is on the Palace for day two. I kind of wonder. I'm curious. Like, I understand changing like one or two cards, but the players that went from day one to day two that changed like pretty like not even like significant cards, but it's just like they're playing like I don't know, like one less Jirachi and one more like Dark Pupitar or something. I'm like, what? Like, I feel like you would be really comfortable with the ratios like going into the event. So I'm surprised to see some of these changes. But again, I'm not dissing anybody. It's just interesting to me. Um, then we also had May, who was on Bombtar day one and Sceptile day two. So let's see here. May's Bombtar has only one Jirachi, a little bold, 3/3 Trode. Typically, we see players opt to not play more than two Voltorb because you kind of don't want to start with it most of the time, but you do want to get Electrode, so you play higher Trode EX counts. But not May. He is on Lunasol. He's also playing the Fighting Lunar. What does this? What does this do for him? You're not attacking with target attack. I guess it's to allow uh Solrock to retreat. That's weird though, because I feel like Psychic Lunatone is really nice to grab Transceiver or Swoop in this deck. Um, I do know that May has like really good results with Bombtar though, so I assume he has thought about the implications of these things a lot more than I have from looking at his deck list for 20 seconds. Um, Beyond that, he's got kind of like the standard energy lineup, the standard 2 Cess, 2 Windstorm, quad Admin, quad POW. The only other like kind of noteworthy thing here is that he is on Rare Candy. I think one singular rare candy is probably not going to be the difference maker, but I think that that makes about as much sense as running like a versus seeker in the slot or like a warp point or something or fluffy berry. I don't know. Um, Also, two adventure. I guess. Anyway, a little interesting. And then for day two, played a Sceptile EX list. This is pretty similar to Canton's. No, it's not. No, it's really not. Um, so let me just see. 203 Pidgeot. It's kind of typical for these Sceptile EX decks now. Um, he's on a pretty thick Sceptile line. Usually we only see one of the grass Sceptile EX. I'm interested to know perhaps why he was on the two of them, like what matchups that was useful for. Especially because you just play so many recovery cards in high retriever counts, or you play Holland Farmer, which is like crazy recovery amount. What else? What else is interesting about this? Elms, very unusual for Japanese decks in particular. I know Japanese players do not like playing Professor Elm's training method. Um, and the Roselia, I think is almost never a like dead card in any matchup, but it's usually not a card that I think about finding space for in decks. So it's cool to see it coming into play here. No POW is very interesting. I think POW is pretty fantastic in this deck. It's just a really nice card to have in Pidgeot decks. Regirock, I think, is pretty essential in Sceptile. Um, Only three cast form. I don't know how standard that is. Only three Windstorm, but I think in this format you can get away with it. Well, in this, like, Japanese players don't play as much Railer, Camler stuff, and also, like, people weren't doing it in person as much, so that makes sense. And then opting for the Holland Farmer over the Retriever makes sense because he is playing a pretty high energy count. Well, it's 6 energy, but a lot of the time this deck plays like 3 or 4, so you are getting some extra use out of that card. No warp energy is pretty brave, but he has only 2 warp point. I think it's just the same logic of playing 3 Windstorm, where you have to assume that you're not going to be hitting too many what's it called, like PAL lock decks. And Sceptile has play for PAL lock decks most of the time, so I get it. Let me see. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish. Okay. Alrighty. We will get through the rest of these. So we have Chiro. So Chiro played Dragtrode both days. I played him in day one. Did I play anybody else here in day one? I mentioned playing Suika. Yeah, that was the only person I played day one so far. Chiro was on a pretty wacky Dragtrode. Um, and I think that like this is usually pretty common to play Septile in these lists. He's also on Quad Candy to assist that. And I think Quad Candy is really cool. I think that the Dragonite lineup is a little unusual considering the fact that he's on Quad Candy, only 2 Dark Dragonite. But the fact that he's on Double Retriever kind of helps there. Also, I'm just kind of realizing this, but he's not playing Sneasel, so the only attacker is Dragonites, and then of course like Sceptile and the Regirock. I think Regirock is again a great pick in this format. There's Bomb Tower everywhere, and yeah, they do play cards to stop your fighting weakness from hitting them, but they also have to account for like the rest of the game. You know, they have to get scrambles and special darknesses and so on. So it's nice to have, even if it seems on paper like it wouldn't be useful. Um, what else here? The 2 Brinies and the 2 warp points probably mean that he's not going to be getting trapped anytime soon. And no stadium magic, just the quad windstorm. It's a really cool list, and I think that the this is like a pretty classic approach for like a Japanese Dragtrode list, because I'm pretty sure a lot of them historically have not played Sneasel, but they have played like Septile X, Trode X, and like I've seen Mew star in some of these before, so that type of thing. And yeah, the two Holland's cast forms to make the backup attackers more useful, and then of course the brinies to help tank with tank with Dragonite. Um, and then day two, he just swapped out a couple windstorms for brinies. You should absolutely not play this into a TCG1 meta, but for this, it works out fine because you're probably not going to hit a a cess deck, and if you hit one, it's doable. Yeah, but very good stuff. Chiro was awesome to play against him. Then we have Q on day one. He was on Metagross Swampert and some really interesting picks in this one. So I know that he has for a while been on uh, the Mag Cargo line. I thought he was on Delcatty, but I might be thinking of somebody else. Um, but yeah, he does like the Mag Cargo line in this list a lot. Um, and the Fire Mew as well as the Mr. Mime or the Mime Junior rather are there in order to hit, let's say, Sceptile X and Gardevoir respectively. Uh, and those cards are very problematic, and he is on triple pal to help like target specific cards in those matchups. And then like he's on Crystal Beach to kind of be a thorn in the side for just a ton of decks. I mean, Nidoqueen um, or Gardevoir, for example. I think if you're going to play Crystal Beach in a deck like this, you kind of do need to play more. I think one Crystal Beach doesn't really slow down enough decks. Like one Crystal Beach and Ratlock is okay because you can recur it, but in this, I feel like you kind of want to fit something else in or put something else over it in its place. Like a second Island Cave would probably be fine. I think Island Cave is really cool in this deck because it heals like all your attackers, or at least the best ones. Beyond that, we've got both of the Jirachis to help set up. I think Swoop is a really cool card in this deck because you can like swoop out, I don't know, like a Beldum on the bench for Fire Mew or for Mime Jr. and do like a surprise attack. People are not going to be playing around Swoop in this, if they see this deck, and so I think that that's a really cool inclusion. And of course, you got the quad warp energy and the 2 warp point. I'm pretty sure playing against him at Stambler Open may have traumatized him a bit. That's why he's on all these switch cards. Um, what else do we got here? And then for day two, he played his patented Cradily. Glancing at it, I don't really see any huge changes. I know that the Battle Frontier is new. I don't know what he took out in order to include it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know like this entire list front to back off the top of my head. Maybe a Holland GL he took out, but I'm not certain about that. Anyways, this is his like pride and joy. It's his creation. It's really cool to see that he picked it for day two, even if it didn't work out so well. If you don't know what this deck is, this deck got second place at Stambler 2, which is pretty wild. I think that's the second biggest RSPK tournament, and so Q had very good results going into this tournament with both of these decks, and so it was cool to see him perform with both. I don't really. I do like playing one fewer of the Power Keepers Cradily in this deck, so I can facilitate a 2-1 Eradicate line. But that's just my personal preference. Of course, I'm biased towards Eradicate, so and Q's biased towards Cradily, so maybe that has something to do with it. But um, yeah, good stuff for both lists, I would say. I think they both offer very novel takes on both an established archetype and also an archetype that he created. So I think both are very cool. Then we have Timorin on Flygon Dragonite. I actually am just kind of looking at this list for the first time. Man, okay, here's my hope. One second. Sorry, I was drinking water. I only drink water, by the way. Um, my hope for the future is that we figure out what in the heck to play with Dragonite EX because every time I see a Dragonite EX deck do well, they are on something different. They're on Dragonite Delta, they're on Sceptile EX, they're on Sceptile Energy Trans, they're on nothing. They're on like two stadiums, they're on four stadiums, they're on like water Mew. Like I just never know what this deck is going to do, and I feel like it has a lot of things that it can do, and I just don't know what the optimal one is. I do think Lunar Rock is really good in this deck, though. I think Lunar Rock is kind of killer. And the stadium lineup's cool. The thing I do dislike about this deck is that you really don't want to lock Crystal Beach in play because, like, Crystal Beach kind of sucks to get. Like, you want to not have to worry about Crystal Beach as the deck. Like, this deck doesn't like Crystal Beach being in play a lot of the time. And then you also can't lock, like, Desert Ruins in play. And then Cursed Stone, like, a lot of the lists with this deck, you don't really want to lock Cursed Stone in play because you have a Pokepower guy. In this case, you have two. You have Jirachi. Well, you have Chimecho and Flygon. Jirachi doesn't really count. No swoops in this is also pretty interesting. I feel like with this many basics, and especially with Lunar Rock, swoop is just pretty nice to have. But no, I don't know. Only two warp energy is a little brave, but as I've said many times, you're not expecting too many POW decks, especially at day one in this event. And then, of course, the elephant in the room, the Flygon Delta to energy accelerate. It makes sense. You you do kind of struggle with getting like a strong power level with this deck, and I see the idea of pivoting from like let me just try Def Unlocking to like let me string Dragon Roars together because Dragon Roar is like one of the strongest attacks in the entire format. It's just unbelievably good. 80 damage that can't be resisted and isn't affected by like special metal. And then if it does excess damage, hits the bench is just insane. It's like an even better version of Final Laser in a lot of cases. So yeah, that is that is this very unusual build. I would be curious to see if more people tried this out. I'm not really a Dragonite EX player, so I have no real comments to make on it, but definitely cool. Yeah, and then for day two, we have a completely different build. We have the Sceptile EX. I would almost like to see the Energy Trans Sceptile in this too. I think that would be kind of funny, but that's probably putting too many cooks in the kitchen. Um, and then of course the Delta Dragonite, the Lightning one is for energy recursion as well as acceleration. So it's probably serving a similar purpose to Flygon. Again, I don't know. Like, I feel like if you're comfortable with one of these, you would just pick one of them and say that the other one sucks. But apparently not. Also, triple time machine, dude. What are they putting in the water over there? They come up with the coolest things. I swear. Two Windstorm. Also, I guess it makes sense. I mean, you do want to rely on the what's this thing called? Delta charge, lightning charge, whatever the power is called. And the Sceptile EX is like the best card in the format, so of course you're going to play it. We saw a ton of Sceptile EX, by the way, in this, like, across however many decks there are. I mean, in a whole bunch of different decks, we saw an Imperious Sceptile, Nidoqueen, Dragonite, Dragtrode, like just very, very dominant card. And I think really the face of modern RSTPK is Sceptile EX. Um, then Ichika on Ryegs, I believe that I played them. I played horribly. Played like the worst I've played in a while in this series, and I still won because it's a really bad matchup for Ryegs. Uh, but as to his list, I'm not a Ryegs player, so I really don't know a whole lot about the intricacies of this. The two cast form seems a little bold, especially when you're playing it alongside Fire Mew, which kind of necessitates this sort of energy. But I guess it's fine. He is on the Quad Retriever, so that probably helps his lines a bit. Quad Retriever, while you're also running 4/4 of both Raichu and Executor, seems like it might be a little much, but again, I'm really not a Ryegs guy. Opting for the Quad Stevens over running admin, from what I can tell. Only on the 3 admin for this one is interesting because usually Ryegs does kind of like going down in the prize count and then hitting him with admin and then hitting him with metallic thunder or whatever split bomb. Um, yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount of things to comment on here. Um, energy count is fairly standard. Uh, no tricky business with like desert ruins just on the quad. Um, the curse stones. I believe this is the only Ryegs that topped. Not a whole lot of Ryegs at this event. I know Canton was on it, but I don't think many other people were. Um, but yeah, good stuff to Ichika. Then I believe yeah. So Runru uh was not feeling well. He technically qualified for day 2, but he wasn't feeling well, so he dropped out. I'll talk about his list now. He was on Meganium, and I did play him in Swiss. And ever since KG won Double Rainbow 2023 with this deck, I think it's been on a lot more people's radars. One thing is for certain, this deck cuts through Bombtar. Like, I don't know off the top of my head what his day 1 looked like, but if he went to day 2 on this deck, my guess is that he hit at least a couple of Bombtar. Um, oh, and so the historic problem with this deck, at least in my opinion, is that it gets swerved pretty hard by Gardevoir, and he's on like the Sceptile EX and the Jirachi to just really put the nail in the coffin in that matchup. Also, he's on Victory Ring. When I played against him turn 1, like he immediately went Mentor Pitch Victory Ring, and I was like, what? Like he was just like completely nonchalant about it, and I was pretty stunned. But Victory Ring is cool in this deck. I mean, it's a crazy card. Uh, I don't know, like if this card was always legal, would we just be playing it in everything? I have no idea. Like I don't think so. Usually you don't like want your prize cards that bad, but I don't know. Who can say? Um, Triple multi is very peculiar. That's almost certainly to facilitate um, Jirachi because it lets you get turn 1 shield beam out pretty easily. Um, pretty interesting energy count in general. Also, the beating wings Pidgeot is a little ambitious, I would say. It's usually a pretty ambitious card, but it's fun. Also, if you beating wings put back the Meganium, then like you can reuse evolutionary call, which is fun. Um, almost would like to see a Delta Rainbow or two in this deck. Um, I feel like, well, I don't know. I was gonna say because you want to be able to attack with Delta Meganium even if they have Crystal Beach up, but it's pretty rare that you would need both of those to happen. I don't know, like, maybe against Rayler, but there's not much Rayler at this event, so kind of makes sense. But yeah, it seems like he's trying to account for the like real problematic matchups um for Delta Meganium. Also, the Fire Mew is of course there for Sceptile. So again, so much Sceptile EX at this tournament, at this event. It's if you take nothing away, it is that Sceptile EX is here to stay, and people are going to be playing countermeasures to it. They're going to be playing Fire Mew. They're going to be playing Fire decks. But Sceptile EX, it just looks like it's kind of become a permanent fixture. Um, and anyways, last and in some regards maybe least is Ruru on Dark Tyranitar plus Electro DX. Stop me if you've seen this one before. Um, just looking at this list. Wow, this is a very, very normal list. Is the day 2 list even more normal? These are both very normal lists. I love the one Castaway. I think Castaway in this deck is really cool because, like, the three cards it gets you are good every time. Like, it gets you an energy, which, like, you almost always want to be attaching an energy per turn in Bombtar. Gets you an energy, gets you your cessation crystal, which again you usually want to have access to, and it gets you your like admin for next turn or your like mentor if you're setting up. I just feel like Castaway in this deck, you don't want to run more than like one or maybe two, but um, I just feel like it's really nice to have you get diminishing returns from any future ones, but the first one seems like it's almost always good, and I do like playing it, and so I think that's a cool takeaway, and it inspired me to play Castaway in the Bomb Tower list that I started messing around with. Um, I'd say a big takeaway from this event actually is that there are a whole lot of approaches to Bomb Tower that are not just the like approach where you're running the lists that have been historically used, but maybe you play Luna Rock or maybe you play like a Jirachi HL. Like they're playing pretty excuse me, unusual things in these lists. A lot of them making some interesting concessions as well. Excuse me. And yeah, so that's gonna do it. So that's the Double Rainbow top 16. Um, as far as the rest of the field, there was quite a few Gardevoir, and none of them topped except for my list. And we'll talk about it when we get to the Stambler recap as well. But the uh, the fact of the matter is that I think that like the Japanese approach to the list is kind of questionable. I think that like it's just really not like covering the matchups that Gardevoir needs to cover because Gardevoir just sweeps so many of these decks. Like I think if you're playing Regirock, you do totally fine against Bombtar. I was positive against Bombtar at the event. I've been positive against Bombtar in testing. Like and then you kind of fear what's it called? What's it called? Like Cestex, but you can just play like super high warp counts and Mew Star and be fine against those. And once you've got those two cards in there, like I just feel like everything else you just kind of like is smooth sailing and you don't really want to worry about including tech cards. So but I've talked about this a million times. Need to stop talking about my Gardevoir philosophies. Um, but other than that, there were even more Bomb Tower that didn't make the cut. Very few Railer. I think Jason might have been the only Camler player, and of course no Ratlock. I wasn't on it, and nobody else was brave enough to play it for day one. And I don't think there are any Ratlock players that. I don't think anybody that day two does a Ratlock player. Um, and I thought I could do it with Gardevoir, so I didn't do it with Rat. Um, let's see. That's about it for Double Rainbow. Now I'll get into the Stambler Open. Coolest deck at this event that was not in the top cut was definitely May's very, very perplexing Psychic Control deck. Um, Other dimensions are kind of weird on this, but you get the idea. He's on 7 Psychic Energy. Um, this deck is really interesting. It's kind of similar to Ratlock. You're playing the Sceptile EX, the Pidgeot, the Quad Pal. He's also on Rocket's Wob to recur the pals as well as recurring like retrievers. Um, and he is on a unknown package. This is both for getting set up with unknown M and disruption with unknown E. He is also on unknown Z, which if you don't know what that card does, its attack is just the same as like Raichu's Zap. And so that's both spread on your opponent's side where you can like set up for KOs later, and it's self-damaging. It does 20 to itself because it has like the Poke Power, and so that means that you are able to set up for like put yourself into PAL KO range. It's also an Alakazam Star, which you can just use skill copy to put cards back. Is that what it's called? The one that the pickup attack. I can't remember which is which. Well, I guess I could just click on the card here. The Psychic Select. I bet. Um, and that's a really cool list. Also, he's on the ID 23, the Shuppet that discards energy cards. um, but no, really cool list. I think he went 3-3. But be interesting to see this more. I do want to mess around with it some, even though it is pretty like conceptually similar to Ratlock, I think. So there's probably some overlap. Beyond that, yeah, I guess I can get into the top 8. So I'll do the reverse of what I did last time, where I'll talk about the lowest placing one first. So Delzon is a IRL friend of mine. I got him into RS to PK like 2 or 3 weeks before this event, and then he entered and got top 8. He understandably was not anticipating getting top 8, so he like had plans that night, and he had to drop out. But he did make top 8. Like, let it be known that if he didn't drop out, then he would be playing in top 8. So I'm going to talk about him, even though it says he's not in top 8. He made top 8 by results. So he was on uh, Flygon Altaria. So this is a deck that we had kind of been messing around. Well, we had been messing around with, where he was just looking at the available cards. He saw like how busted Flygon was, and he was like, okay, let me try to make something out of this. So there's really a hodgepodge of things going on in this list. The primary strategy is that you want to get Altaria EX set up, and then you can extra boost energy onto Flygon EX. So there's of course Flygon Delta, which has a built-in acceleration. So the question is, why wouldn't you just play that? Flygon Delta is annoying to set up because it's another stage 2, and Altaria is a better attacker in many cases, because it hits like a pretty relevant weakness in water. I mean, Arcanon's a deck to watch out for, and it hits like Regirock, which Flygon decks can kind of get annoyed by sometimes. And he's also on just some other kind of silly cards. He's on Mr. Mime EX, the Magic Evens one. I don't remember exactly what the target was for this guy, but it is funny. He's on Stantler as a way to sort of smokescreen what exactly he's playing. Because if you see like Stantler in a deck like this, you're just kind of like, well, like now I have no idea. Like if you just see like Flygon and Altaria, it's like, okay, well obviously I know what the strategy is, but if you see Stantler, it's like, whoa, what's going on? Um, and so Stantler is just good to attack with. You can hide behind Stantler and like attach to that early game, and then once you get like the Altaria set up, then you can use that to start setting up the Flygons, so you're not behind too much on energy attachments. And Stantler's just good in general. It's kind of the Destiny approach where it's just good to attack with early game. And the Vaporeon Star and the Oran Berries are in there because uh, Flygon is really hard to KO, and if it's healing, it's even harder. And so he was asking me, when he started the format, like what cards heal, and I was like, well, there's really not that many. There's like Citrus Berry and Life Herb. He was like, what cards heal EXs? And I was like, well, then you're really stretching it thin because there's like Oran Berry and like Vaporeon Star, and he played Vaporeon Star, and it seemed really cool. Like this card, really just had a new like I saw like the new light with this card when he was playing this deck, and it seemed very productive for him. It helps a lot with confusion against Stantler. It helps a lot with just like getting out of damage thresholds. A lot of cards will deal like 80 damage to Flygon EX, or like it'll get chipped down into where you can KO it with something, and you can just drop Vaporeon down, and then they can't deal with it. So yeah, definitely a really cool way to go about the deck. And I think we might see more people messing around with similar ideas. The three switch and the three Phoebes and the two warp energy mean that it's pretty unlikely anything gets stuck. And yeah, I think it's a really sick list, and I'm glad to see that he performed well with it. So getting on to the rest of the top eight, we have Bland Easy. He is on excuse me. He is on Hopkins's Gardevoir list, which is my Gardevoir list with Ray EX over Mime EX. Um, Again, not much to say that it hasn't been said a million times. He had a nice run. Beat some pretty tricky matchups in Gardevoir. The mirror is always tricky, so taking both of those is nice, and Bomb Tower can be tricky. I don't know how he lost to Ryegs. I think he said he got a horrible start because I feel like this matchup is pretty free with Gardevoir. But um, yeah. So I've been through that a million times. Frosty, also in top eight. Um, I believe, yeah, he's still on the Lunar Rock package. I think Lunar Rock is very strong in this format. And he has gone to ATM Rock. We saw this, and I think one or two of the Japanese bomb tower lists, but I think it has a lot of practical implications, especially against Sceptile. I think that that's the major use case for this card. It's still not like an ace in the hole, but I think it gives the bomb tower player enough like of a countermeasure that they, and it's also just really hard to prepare against. Not like it's not played enough that you have to make concessions in your gameplay to deal with it, and so you're not going to make those concessions, and then it gets stronger as a result of that. So definitely a cool card. And then let's see what else. Other than that, the just not caring at all about fighting weakness, saying, you know what, if you've got Regirock, you've got Regirock. I'm gonna just max out on the Cyclone and heal package. Is also a pretty heads up play. I think I would almost want to see the Warp Energy here over one of the Cyclones. I see the logic behind three, but I think that you probably would get more out of a Warp Energy, but I don't know. I'm really not a bomb tar aficionado. Um, let's see. That's about it. He is on the Brinies, no Versus Seeker. I think the last time in Stambler he was the opposite, but yeah. Um, who else do we have here? Vance Kelly, JD Vance Kelly on Quad Ray. Um, there was a Ratlock player, Jamie Henderson, and I was telling him advice like between rounds because I wasn't able to compete in this tournament, but there was another Ratlock player, so I had to help out. And he told me he lost to this deck, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna like ruin this for you, but Ratlock destroys this deck, but you have to attack with Espeon Star, which is like extremely unintuitive to just know to do. Um, Anyways, JD Vance Kelly played this deck, and he had a great run. Went 4-2 in Swiss against some pretty strong competition, uh, and was able to make top eight. Um, if you don't know about this deck, the strategy is that you use the Water Rayquaza to attach a bunch of energy to it and tank with, and then you swoop it out for the lightning one, and you just do like a million damage and then heal it all the time. It's a pretty gimmicky deck, but it's not a. Mm, it's pretty bad, but like it is good against certain things. Like I think against Bombtar, it's actually probably not bad, and I don't know actually what Railer would do against it. So maybe against those two, it is pretty good, I think. But against a lot of decks, it is kind of questionable. This is like, I'm pretty sure a good list. I don't know if Vance made this list himself or if he just kind of someone told him about the event and he saw the deck and thought it looked cool. And I really don't know. But um, yeah, I mean, it's a great result. I'll be very straightforward. I don't know a single thing about um, quad ray deck building, but this looks good. I'm pretty sure some of them play what's it called, like citrus berry and like lumberry over the cessation crystals. I don't know how good or bad that is, but that's the only thing I really know. And I think some of them do not play like reversal, or they only play one of reversal or ER2 or something. Um, I think potion. No, I'm pretty sure they all play potion. So yeah, great stuff. This is like the best result that this deck has ever had. So might be something there. We have running high on Dragtrode. He's on Sableye Dragtrode. I'm pretty sure that Odysseus has been talking about this, and we've just seen, honestly, like this year, we've seen a lot of experimentation with Sableye in this deck as well as Bombtar. Um, I think that like the results are still a little unclear as to which is better because they've seen good results with and without the card, but I think at this point Sableye has established itself as a viable card to be running in these darkness decks, and we see that with running high, getting going 5-1 in Swiss, only to lose to somebody in Top Cut, Chiro on the Chiro box, of course. Um, Beyond that, nothing super crazy. I don't really like the Darkness Lunatone in this deck. I think that like I get it, it's cute with the Sneasel where you can change it to dark, but I think that your problem with this deck, like you're gonna get screwed over by Cursed Stone, or like screwed over by not having the pretty good attack on Lunatone if you open with it more than you are like being 10 damage short from Dark Ring. Although he's not playing Desert Ruins, so maybe it is kind of, I don't know. I don't know. It's really cutting hairs, splitting hairs to a certain point. Cutting hairs. Um, let's see. Beyond that, re-swoop. Oh, because he's on Sableye. Obviously, that makes sense. Only 2 R energy and only 3 R energy and only 2 rainbow energy. Um, I mean, three rainbow energy, like two rainbow energy isn't that crazy. It's more just the fact that when you play Sableye, you really want to open like a lot of, you really want to play a lot of energy. I have a post on my blog about Sableye math if you want to check that out. But yeah, beyond that, nothing I'm seeing that really sticks out. Two Rockets Pokeball. Do they usually play three? I don't know. You have to make some concessions when you play the Sableye package in these decks. So that is the thing. Sableye does change the way that you create these decks. So it's not just like all upside. And I think it does make a lot of sense in Dragtrode because Dragtrode doesn't have like a great opener. Like say Sneasel's good, but like kind of not the best, sort of. And then Dratini is kind of like the Dratini and the Voltor both have like good attacks for basics, but they're not going to set up. And you really can't afford to run like Jirachi in the deck. So, um, yeah, very. And then he's on the Delta Species Dragonite because you're playing Sableye, so you don't really care if the Dratini you're opening is good because you want to be opening Sableye. So, yeah, very cool stuff. Then we have Chiro on what else? Well, I guess he did top double rainbow with Dragtrode, but he's on Chiro Special. Uh, just want to make a note here. Chiro has topped, I believe, three events this year. It's topped Stambler 1, and then Double Rainbow, and then Stambler um, 4. I'm pretty sure he's topped three events, which is pretty impressive. A lot of players have not done that. I think three is the most anybody has topped. Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that three is the max that we have so far. Um, which is okay. Hold on, let me think about this. Because I have three tops. Q has three tops. Chiro has three tops. Tord has three tops. Jason has two tops. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Some fun facts there. Anyways, Chiro special. I do know the last time he topped with this deck, he was on reversals, or maybe yeah. Last time I saw him play this deck, he was on reversals. I am curious why he swapped them out because that card seemed crazy in this list. He's also still on probably like the worst non Mr. Mime card to ever top one of these events, which is Latios EX, which just looks awful. This card looks so bad, but it's probably fine. I don't really understand what the rationale is for playing it. Like, I guess it one shots like Dragonite, Dark Dragonite, and it's another thing to power up with the other Latios EX, but I feel like you would just power up Latios or Latios, so I don't really know what this covers. I also wonder if he's ever considered like the Latios that shuts off Pokebodies. I didn't even really realize that he's not playing that in this deck, but I don't know. I've kind of given up on trying to understand this deck. He is the only person that's been able to make it work, and he has seen just considerable success with it. Like it's a top deck, right? Like this is like a high B tier, low A tier deck, right? Like it just has to be. Yeah, but I don't know how to play it. Nobody else knows how to play it, and it doesn't even seem like. I mean, it's all like big, strong basics, but I don't know. I just feel like none of us know how to figure it out. So, um, yeah, always fun to see. One thing I think would be funny in this deck is running he's running the Psychic Ditto to copy things, but running the Ditto that swaps for a discard pile thing would be funny because you can tutor the Psychic Ditto into that Ditto and then tutor that into something from your discard, which is not good. Like, there's nothing you'd even want to switch to except like Latios Star, but it would be funny. Whoops. Beyond that, he's on a lot of psychic energies for Jirachi. Please tell me he plays Jirachi. Yeah, yeah. Jirachi, and then a lot of water energies for Latios EX, and then just Holland's Gas Form to cover the rest. The Mewtwo to move the energy around. Kyogre EX to cuck Railer. I kind of wonder if maybe Groudon EX isn't better here. Like you could cut a Regirock and then play a Groudon EX and then have one more slot for something, but again, I am but a mere mortal. I will never understand Shiro Special, so Holland Ruins as well, by the way. Why? It seems pretty good, but I don't know. I have no idea. Not a clue. One admin? Why? Your guess is as good as mine. Um, and we have Chaos of Slayer on a new deck, top four with this really cool Swampert EX Steelix EX list. Um, I think that I mean it's not super novel in terms of you're pairing a strong metal type with Swampert EX, which is I mean the matches up very well with most of them. But novel in terms of I've never seen it with Steelix before. You get back the rainbow energies, and you can use Mudslide repeatedly. And Steelix EX makes a lot of sense for this role. Sniping Pidgeot is really good. You do kind of wish you did a little more damage so that what's it called? Bombtar isn't as scary, but I mean, Aggron EX and Metagross EX have the same problem. And like with other ones, he is on the two pals. It's not like Steelix snipes really hard, so I would say that the POW is not quite as critical as it is in like Metagross EX, Swampert EX. But he is playing the Fire Mew to target Sceptile EX specifically, so it makes sense to play it with the POW. Island Cave is cool in these Swampert EX decks where you're just using it as a get out of jail free card against Stantler. Um, and he's on the heavy warp energy count. Heal energy is for Jirachi, I'm pretty sure. I almost feel like I'd like to see like a Cyclone there, or maybe like a Fighting. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't played a single game of this deck. I haven't watched a single game of this deck, but it looks really cool. Also, the fact that you are playing just the Steelix, no other stage two, or sorry, just the Swampert, no other stage twos in terms of your attackers means that he is able to fit a 2-3 Pidgeot line in. Um, Also, just in terms of talking about the meta for the year, we've seen 204 and like 203 Pidgeot go from being like a esoteric thing that the Japanese players do to something that we really have just seen a lot of people kind of pivoting towards. It just is good, and there are decks where it just works, and I think that you have to really consider why you want to run it in whatever deck you're considering it in, but it's worth considering. I would like to see an Elms in this deck, though. I think that you want a way to search out your Swampert EX and your Steelix EX. And I think no Elms and no Stevens. I would, I mean, y'all know me. I would cut an admin for a Stevens or for an Elms or something, but it is what it is. I also don't think you need Retriever in this list. Like, I think part of the appeal to playing Steelix EX is that you can play 3-3, or you can even play 2-2 and keep the Retriever, but like fit two other cards in. Um, like I think you would want 4 Windstorm. I don't know. Like a lot of these are just like minor quibbles I have with some aspects of the list, but it's a really cool list. It's really heads up. The Celebi EX is also really funny. Just gets you back anything. and it pairs well with Giant Stump. Maybe that's why Sling Retriever is for the Giant Stump Celebi combo. But no, super cool list. Had a great run. Went 5-1 in Swiss, only losing to Cheer, of course. And then eventually getting taken out by Chuck. But no, really cool stuff. And then we have the top two. We have Chuck and Tord, both on Railer. Both have very different approaches. Chuck is on 4 mana, a decision which completely baffles me. I feel like you do not want to start with Minun. Like, you almost never want to start with Minun. And I don't know why he did that. Like, and if you're worried about running out of them, I feel like you would just want to play like one Retriever, right? Like 3 mana and 1 Retriever for a similar purpose. I think 3 Ray EX is good. Also, he's not on like really any of the like BS cards that have been implemented by Tord. He's not on like Brinies, he's not on Giant Stump. He's just on kind of the classical approach. Only one Super Scoop Up, the Dual Ball that I know Jason hates. Only one fan club is also, well, I guess the Dual Ball kind of cancels that out. But yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to say about this list. 5 stadiums is quite a few, and I think 1 balloon, 1 Super Scoop Up I could have cost him in the finals. I didn't watch the finals, but I think that that's pretty bold to play into decks that can power lock you. So that's perhaps worth investigating. And then we have Tord Reklev winning. He only lost to Bombtar round 1, and then he went, what is this, like 7-0? 8-0. Wow. Crazy run from Tord. Crazy list too. If y'all have not seen this list, it is a very interesting approach. Only on the 1 Minun, and no like Retriever or anything. So once that Minun goes, it's gone. 4 Ray, 4 Stantler, also 4 Versus Seeker, and then just like a whole host of like the supporters that you normally are playing many more copies of. He's only on 1 Stevens, he's only on 1 Marys, he's on the Mr. Stones, he's on a Copycat, and then just playing super high Versus Seeker counts. Only 3 ER2, but it's a 3-1 split between ER2 and Reversal, which I actually really like a lot. I think that's really sick. Like, if you're going to play 4 flip cards, I feel like Reversal is really cool to play in early game because, like, it can be so annoying to get something reversaled up and then like it just gets confused by Stantler, or you can reversal up like a Pidgeot early game and just like one shot it with Ray X. Very cool approach. Also, he's only on a single disruptive stadium as opposed to Chuck's 5. He's on 1 Curse Stone. And with Minun, he's probably not getting that back, and he's only on 3 cessations. So this is really just like all about Ray EX and using Stantler to kind of support Ray EX as opposed to trying to control the game. Wouldn't be surprised to see him like cut a pow next time we see him play this deck. Also on a lower energy count, only 13 lightning, so that he can really like stuff as many crazy disruptive cards in this deck as possible. 4 Super Scoop Up. I think Tord has shown he really likes this card. My suggestion, if he cares at all and he's watching this, is that if you're planning to prep against Ratlock, you should play a Warp Energy or 2. I think that would help quite a bit in terms of like making the deck not get blocked as easily, if that's your concern. I know you said that some of the stuff he was playing was anti-rat technology. What's that? Ford has shown in his incredible 3 tournament victories with this deck that the only thing that can really stop him is Ratlock. And so it makes sense that he's teching specifically for that. But I would say, personally, I would play Warp Energy in this deck if that's your main concern. You don't like. I feel like you can play around the Lightning Energy requirements on Ray EX. I don't know. I think Warp Energy should be investigated. But no, really, really great stuff from Tord and from all the players that did well at this event. And it seemed like it was really fun. A lot of diverse metagame picks. Whole lot of crazy things going on as always. And yeah, I'm excited for the next Stambler, which is going to be on November 16th in like about 3 weeks here. I'm going to be playing if I don't have something else going on. Um, and yeah, so that about does it for that part of the video, which is the tournament recaps. I also reached out to some other players about about their thoughts on the metagame as a whole. Excuse me. So let's see, who all do I have here? So I talked to Rogar, who got top 4, I believe, at Stambler 1, and he's been actively playing the metagame the entire year, the format the entire year. He said that he believes. Let me pull up the players' results actually. Oh, also something I want to mention is oh, awesome. So since I posted about this, it's gotten 6 more registrations, which is really cool. Um, the next Stambler Open has, that is. So for every player who enters this event and plays in it, I will donate $10 to PCRF, which is the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. I think this is a really good cause, and with the ongoing genocide that's happening in the Gaza Strip, that it's a responsibility that I have as somebody who's able to help contribute to reducing it. And so I'm going to be donating for that cause. So if nothing else, if you're not already enticed to play the best metagame in Pokemon and play against the best players in the best metagame, then maybe that will push you over the edge. I don't know, but I did want to mention that. Um, and so, anyways, back to what I was saying about Rogar's thoughts. Um, pull up Rogar. Um, so Rogar, who's a Bayonet player, he also plays Railer. I think those are his 2 main decks. He was saying thinks the format is really evening out over a meta that is Stantler centric, but one that has to tech for Rat and other lock decks like Craterly and such. He says the presence of these decks alone call for most decks to change either the way they play or how they are built. Some needing text, while others needs to change the structure of the deck just to have a fighting chance. And he specifically cites Bayonet changing ER2s to reversals in order to be able to threaten Ratlock's board as well. Like you can play Fire Mew plus reversal in order to hit Sceptile, and also just like that just seems good in general against Sceptile because a lot of decks are playing Sceptile EX, and while it's not specifically a card being played to target Bayonet, it does like destroy Bayonet. It doesn't get one shot by Bayonet. It makes Bayonet just suck as an attacker. So yeah, I think that Canton's list has been very influential for Bayonet, and uh, Rogar seems to believe so as well. The Fire Mew revelation has been really cool to watch. And he also says that he thinks the Railers win with the online majors and Bomb Tars win at Double Rainbow. Kind of cements those two as being the best decks in the format, and he wouldn't be surprised if they continue to dominate. Um, but he's also said that, and this is true, we've seen a bit of a decrease in the success of Bomb Tar in Stamblers. It really only was in Double Rainbow that it kind of performed like we would see the quote unquote best deck perform. He also says a lot of meta developments wouldn't bode well for Bomb Tar since people would be, teching for it and building for it. He does think that the format has a lot more to develop, and that even though the like top five-ish decks have been outlined pretty well, I don't know what exactly his picks are, but I would say my picks are in order: Bombtar, Railer, Gardevoir, Ratlock, and then probably like Dragtrode for fifth or Nidoqueen or something. But I wouldn't put Nidoqueen there, but I guess some people do. Um, but he's is getting quite long, is it not? That's okay. That's okay. Because there's always time to talk. There's always time to talk about the greatest format, RSTPK. Um, and yeah, so he says that even though the top five decks have been pretty established, there's a chance for any deck to make a deep run at a tournament on any given day, like Swampert Steelix, Legend Box, ID23, or Cutely. So, so yeah, to summarize, his take is that, like the Fire Mew revelation has sort of helped in quelling the Sceptile EX revolution. Um, there's been ways to like play in order to combat the Stantler's dominating online format. Bombtar has seen a pretty big, not resurgence, but like it showed that it is still a top dog at Double Rainbow. And even though it's kind of faltered in online environments, it's going to be here to stay, of course. So yeah, thank you very much to Rogar for giving me your thoughts. Let's see who else I had. I also had comments from Autumn, who I believe also topped at this event. Yes, Autumn Lamb. And she says, let me scroll up. She says, so I think that the latest Stamblers saw a decent shift in the metagame. I think Rad has been pretty format warping in general in the TCG Online meta, or TCG1 meta. And in so much as its presence is a strong influence when choosing what deck to bring. And a lot of the more represented archetypes in the latest Stambler are ones that have a decent favorability into control archetypes like Gardevoir, Dragtrode, and Bombtar. In addition, we saw less turnout for Stantler archetypes and Lock archetypes compared to the previous Stamblers. So kind of the opposite of what Rogar is saying, where she's saying that we're not really seeing that many Stantler decks. We're just seeing like very strong players do very well with Stantler decks. So she continues. That's sort of an indication of where I'm expecting things to go. Players are expecting control a lot more and bringing decks to deal with it. And I'd expect to see more experimentation with the lesser played archetypes too, namely Arcanine, Mutrick, and Scizor. She says, yeah, interesting times. I think in the long term we might see a push and pull effect towards control archetypes as players respect those archetypes more and less depending on recent successes. I say all of this despite Railer winning event after event. I think Railer is still one of the higher power decks in the format. It just requires a very good pilot because in hands other than those pilots, it's seeing less success than previously, which is true. And I also, like when I was talking to her, I was saying, control in RS2PK is just a very hard thing to like prepare for because there's not a single deck that does well against Railer, Ratlock, and Gardevoir. I can't think of a deck that performs well against all three of those. And they're all control decks, but they all just play very different. I mean, SAS and Sceptile EX and Imprison are three very different things, but they are very strong. And so, yeah. So her thoughts are more that, and also when she mentioned about like the stage one decks, like the Arcanine, Mutrix, Scizor, I think those are very slept on. I think that we're seeing nobody really play them. Bayonet has kind of become the deck of choice for stage one EX decks, but I think those decks are very, very underrated. I think that we might see at least one of them prop up again because I don't think that any of those decks saw like meta reasons for them being bad. I think that they're underplayed. and that they will stop being underplayed someday. And I think Autumn is totally right to mention that. So thank you to Autumn for submitting your comments. We also saw I saw Hopkins message me as well. Um, he says so he hasn't been playing too much since his incredible top two performance at the Spring Stambler Open. Um, so Hopkins says, is this even showing the energy counts? Yeah, it is. Okay. He says he doesn't have a whole lot to say other than in 2021 and 2022, he thought RSPK was the worst format ever. Every tournament was Railer dominated and other decks did nothing. And he says he hated it until Ratlock showed up and opened his eyes that the format is much more open than he thought. And then the Fire Mew and the Mew Star Revolution happened, which was cool to see from the US and the Japanese players. But he says Rayleigh still dominates. So we got out of that part, but then came right back to it in the circle. Um, he says, I think it is the best format of all time, and every format needs a best deck, but Rayleigh just sat so poorly within my mind for a year or two because I hated it. But now I like Rayleigh a lot, and the best decks are definitely the best, but other decks do get a chance to work and maybe even win sometimes. Um, and he also said he's surprised that Rayleigh isn't played at all on a high level in Japan. I know there's like a lot of the top players in Japan in particular do not like playing Rayleigh. And a lot of the top players in Japan have like their pet decks, or not their pet decks, but like, you know, Little River has Destiny, and Q has Qtily, and Chiro has Chirobucks. So like, they have decks that they're very accomplished with and very like comfortable with. So I guess it's kind of hard to make the switch from that to Railer. And also like, just generally speaking for me, whenever I pick up Railer and I start playing around with it, I just think like I would have to play this deck so much to like reduce the gap between like me and Tord to like minuscule. Like it would take so long for me to get to that point. And until I get to that point, I'm just like worse than Tord with the deck. Or I could be like the best Gardevoir player or the best Ratlock player. And I feel like it's better for me to make sure that I'm both of those things than I'm the like second or third or fourth best Railer player. So that's how I look at it. I don't know if other people feel similarly, but that's usually my approach to Railer and why I don't really want to be a top Railer player, or why I don't want to grind Railer to that point. Um, and then last but not least, so thank you for Hopkins for those words, and also like just for the nice words about the format. I mean, going from hating it to thinking it's the best format is quite a turn of events, and I think it's cool to see. Um, so then, last but not least, Delzon, he says, also, I don't know what message I'd have for the video. I do not think I have that much differing insight to the format. I guess I do think the healing is really strong and underutilized. I don't know if I think there would be a definitely. I don't know. I think if there would be a theoretically best deck in the format, and assuming it hasn't been discovered yet, it would probably be something that had a strong healing element to it. Healing beyond stuff like berries all the way up to Super Scoop Up. I think if you had a deck that only had a few weaknesses, and then put in enough healing so you just barely change the damage thresholds, so you survive that extra one or two turns, that could turn into the deck. Um, and being able to heal EXs consistently with Brinies and Super Scoop Ups with Vaporeon Star, even multiple times in a turn, can really fix this setup problem a deck's tried to skirt in the past, like Bombtar. So his thing is that like he thinks that being able to heal is really underutilized, and honestly, if you look at some of the emerging trends in 2024, we can see that, I mean, he topped with his Flygon Altaria deck, which had this exact philosophy. We saw Vance Kelly top with the Quad Ray deck, which heals. We saw Rayler go from a very established strategy to one that's playing high super scoop up counts. Ratlock is a deck that isn't really known for healing, but it plays two brinies and it plays Giant Stump in order to do fake healing. And honestly, I'm really interested in Vaporeon Star plus like other big hitters like Dragonite or Flygon. And I was gonna say Gardevoir, but probably not Gardevoir, unfortunately. Um, and so I think that's a really interesting insight. And also, it's cool because Delzon has like not been playing the format for very long at all compared to a lot of us, and so his insights are very like um, he's coming into it with not many like pre-established notions of the format. So it's cool to see somebody come in and say like, "What's up with healing? Why aren't people playing healing? It seems really good. People should play it more." And so I think that's something that could be worth looking into. You know, is Vaporeon Star good in Bombtar? Who knows? So that's about going to do it. This video is, oh, I don't know, maybe like an hour and 10 minutes longer than I thought it was going to be. And it's really late here. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. If you watched the whole thing, then I don't know. Take a walk. Maybe it's a nice day out wherever you're at. So thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully my next video will come out shorter than this one and come out sooner than this one did. All right, bye.